The purpose of this tutorial is if you are having trouble running ENMEvaluate. Before using this tutorial, you first need to run the tutorial that is on my website, joshbanta.com. Under Tutorials, at the bottom in the section on species distribution modeling, there's a video tutorial about how to decide which settings to use when running Maxent. This is the tutorial that you will need to run before using this one. This tutorial that I'm giving you right now is only as if you've run the one that is indicated on your screen previously and you were unsuccessful. This tutorial will focus on problems with your species occurrences file, which is where I find the majority of the problems when trying to run ENMEvaluate and it not working. Notice that there are files that are needed for the tutorial, the previous one that you need to run first. If you follow along with the tutorial on my website and you use these files, you should be able to get it to run just as you see in the video. The problem is when you instead want to run ENMEvaluate on your own files, which is of course what you are going to want to do for analyzing your own data. So let's say that you've downloaded the data that comes with the tutorial. But let's say that instead of using the species occurrence locations that come with the tutorial, occ.csv, which we know works, let's say that you bring your own species occurrence locations for your own individual project. For the purposes of simplicity, I'm going to keep the other files the same. So I am going to assume that you're using the same environmental layers that were provided in the tutorial files. Of course, when you're actually using your own data and doing your own analysis, you would really be using your own environmental variables as well. But for the purposes of simplicity here, and because I find that most of the problems with running ENMEvaluate are because of an improperly formatted species occurrences file, I'm going to focus only on that one item being different. So let's say that you've already set things up according to the other tutorial, and one of the things that you did when you ran the other tutorial is you ran this line of code. This line of code reads in the species occurrence points from the tutorial data. I'm just going to run it again here, and then I'm going to come down here to the console window and I'm going to type in the name of the R object that has those occurrence locations so that we can see the format of those occurrence locations within R. Again, we know that this file works because as you saw in the other video, it's possible to completely run ENMEvaluate based upon this file. So if we scroll up to the top of this R object that was printed out on our screen, you can see that it contains two columns, longitude and latitude. It only contains two columns. That's very important. And longitude comes before latitude. And you've noticed that the name longitude is all lowercase, the name latitude is all lowercase. Don't misspell those. So that's the way it looks in the tutorial data that we know works. But let's say that you're bringing your own data to this project. So the first thing we're going to do is, one way or another, take the name of that file, including the file extension .csv, and you're going to need to swap out the name of the file that was given for the sample data for the tutorial, because we want the R script to read in our data, not the sample data. So now I'm just going to run that line of code. I'm going to highlight it and click Run. Let's take a look at it. So I'm going to again type the name of that R object and see what it looks like when it's been read into R. Uh-oh. There's nothing there. And if you didn't check like I did right now, and you just used your own data and ran everything, what would happen? So look at that. We got this error that came near the end of the script. It says error in names, etc., etc. Maybe this is why you're watching the video right now. Maybe you received an error like this. I suspect that that is the reason that you're having trouble, is because you received an error like this. And it's probably because, as I just illustrated to you, your occurrence records were not read properly into R. Again, I'm going to look at how they were read into R right now and show you. There's nothing there. So why is that? Well, there could be a lot of reasons, but ultimately what this means is that you're going to need to completely remake your occurrences file from scratch. And you're going to want it to match the occurrences file in the tutorial data in terms of the way that it's set up. And so I'm going to look at the occurrences locations from the tutorial data that we know works. I'm going to open it in Notepad. This is so that I can see the special characters. Of course, if you were to open this in Excel, it would look a lot cleaner, but then we wouldn't see a lot of the details that could account for why our file is different from the tutorial file. Now I'm going to open up our file that contains our own data that we're trying to use. And again, I'm going to open it up in Notepad so we can see the special characters. Now, every situation is going to be different, but what you're going to want to do is compare occ.csv, which is the gold standard, which we know works, with the format of your file that you're trying to get to work with ENMEvaluate. And unless they match, you're going to want to remake your file all over again to make it match. That doesn't mean it has to have the word bradipus. That's just the name of the particular species that's used in this example. But they're going to need a match. Now, if it turns out that your file was formatted with semicolons instead of with commas, as we see here, there's a simple fix. So, spoiler alert, the reason that the file with our actual data isn't working, whereas the file with the tutorial data is working, is because of these semicolons rather than commas. Now, you may have noticed that there's another issue, which is that the coordinate systems are different between the two files, but I'm going to ignore that problem for now. The way to fix this particular problem with semicolons instead of commas is we come in here to our data, we go to Edit, Replace. We're going to replace all semicolons with commas. I'm going to click on Replace All. Now I'm going to close this and I'm going to click on File, Save. Now I'm sure you notice another problem here, which is that there aren't spaces in between the names of the species and this column called lat for latitude. And that's another difference, by the way. Remember that these columns have to be called latitude, longitude. So I'm just going to go ahead and extend those out. But you notice a lack of space there and that there's lacks of spaces in other places. But it turns out that that doesn't really matter. All right, now I've saved this file. I've made the changes. I'm sure you also noticed that there's no quotation marks. That doesn't matter either. The reason it wasn't running was because of the there were semicolons here separating the items rather than commas. And once you fix that problem, everything will run. All right, so let's try it again. Now that we've made the changes, I'm going to highlight that line of code. I'm going to click Run. Now we're going to look at the R object and see if it was read into R properly. And there you have it. Two columns, one called longitude, one called latitude. And there's only two columns. So now it's formatted perfectly and it will run. Now it will run, but only assuming that your environmental layers are in the coordinate coordinate system. In this case, that's not the case, but you're going to want to make sure of that too. But the place to start when ENMEvaluate isn't running is with the occurrence records. That's usually where the problem lies. And again, there could be a lot of reasons why your occurrence records are not formatted properly. And the only thing you can do to get it formatted properly is open up occ.csv and open up your file, open them up side by side, open them up in Notepad so you can see the special characters and see where the differences lie. In this case, there was a bunch of differences between the two files that I know are not important, but in your case, there may be differences that are not of that type. The safest thing that you can do is to make your file formatted exactly the same as the tutorial example file. All right, I hope this has been helpful and that you are now able to successfully run ENMEvaluate.